Imagine you were born just a few hundred years earlier. No antibiotics, no electricity, no reliable food supply, and a decent chance that a simple cut on your finger could kill you. For most of human history, life was brutal. So when people say the world has never been worse, it makes me wonder, are we actually incredibly lucky to be alive today? Or are we just blind to the problems of our own time? Throughout history, being born at the right time and place has meant the difference between a long, fulfilling life and a short, brutal existence. We had wars, plagues, and famines shaping our existence, but we made it through. So, how fortunate are we today compared to past generations? Without any more delay, let's look at some highlights of human suffering. The Black Death. The Black Death was a devastating pandemic that spread through Europe, Asia, and North Africa via fleas carried by rats along trade routes. Estimated about 75 to 200 million deaths. The Mongol conquests. Under leaders like Genghis Khan or Genghis Khan, the Mongol Empire expanded across Asia and Europe through brutal military campaigns. Estimated about 30 to 40 million deaths. The 30 Years' War, a massive religious and political conflict in Central Europe involving many European powers. About 4.5 to 8 million deaths. The Great Chinese Famine. During the Great Leap Forward, radical agricultural policies and poor planning led to one of the worst famines in human history. Estimated about 15 to 45 million deaths. The Spanish flu pandemic. The Spanish flu spread globally near the end of World War I. Estimated about 50 to 100 million deaths. There are many more examples. Of course, there are the two world wars, but I didn't mention those because I assume most people are aware of those. It might be hard to relate to the data that I listed because it's mostly just numbers, and numbers of that size are hard to understand. Plus, they are only numbers, which makes the data sort of abstract. Living in those periods must have been like hell, and I don't think you and I can quite grasp what really happened. But we can at least get some idea of it if we imagine going through that suffering. If you really imagine living in those periods, and you compare that to how we live nowadays in the first world countries at least, can you really say we are unlucky in this period of human history? What kinds of problems do we have nowadays compared to the harsh periods I listed? I'm not saying that life today is perfect or easy. Every period in history has its own problems, and the ones we face today are real, but they are different. For most of human history, the biggest threats to your life were external forces you had almost no control over. Disease, starvation, war. Today, in much of the developed world, many of the problems we face are less about survival and more about how we live with the world we have built. Now I'm going to list some of today's problems. They may seem like nothing compared to what I listed before, but try to take these seriously, if you can. To me, they just seem, well, you can see for yourself. But notice the contrast between the problems of today and the periods I listed earlier. One of the biggest problems today is loneliness. Despite living in the most connected time in history, millions of people feel deeply isolated. Studies in many developed countries show that large numbers of people report having few close friends or none at all. Humans evolved in small tribes where belonging was essential. Now many of us live surrounded by millions of people, but feel alone. Another major problem is mental health. Depression and anxiety have become some of the most common health issues in the developed nations. People today rarely worry about starving to death, but many struggle with something harder to see, a sense of meaning, purpose, direction. There's also the problem of information overload. For almost all of history, information was scarce. Today, It's endless. Every crisis, every disaster, every conflict, anywhere on Earth is delivered instantly to our phones. Our brains evolved to handle the problems of a small village, not the problems of an entire planet. And then there is something many people feel but rarely talk about: the pressure of comparison. Social media constantly shows us the best moments of other people's lives. The result is that even in a time of unprecedented comfort, many people feel like they're falling behind. So yes, we still have problems. Some of them are serious. But when you zoom out and compare them to the kinds of suffering that defined most of human history, it becomes hard to ignore something remarkable. For the first time in thousands of years, a large part of humanity is no longer fighting just to survive. Instead, we are trying to figure out how to live well. And that might be one of the clearest signs yet that we may actually be living in the luckiest time in human history. But here's the thing though, my take is biased. I live in a first world country. No war, no famine, no collapsing infrastructure, no daily struggle just to survive. I wake up in a warm bed. I drink clean water straight from the tap. If I get sick, I can go to a doctor. For most of human history, that would have sounded like unimaginable luxury. But of course, not everyone in the world lives like this. Even today, millions of people still face poverty, conflict, and hunger. For them, history has not fully moved on yet. But if we look at humanity as a whole, something remarkable has happened over the last few centuries. Extreme poverty has fallen dramatically. Child mortality has dropped. Life expectancy has more than doubled in many parts of the world. Things that once killed millions have become manageable problems in many places. For most of our species' existence, progress was painfully slow. Then suddenly it wasn't. In just a few generations, humanity went from struggling to survive to landing on the moon, from candlelight to electricity, from dying of a simple infection to carrying the collective knowledge of our species in our pockets. And because we were born into this world, it's easy to forget how unusual it actually is. Every generation tends to believe they are living in the worst time. But if you compare our lives to the lives of billions of people who came before us, it becomes very hard to argue that we are not incredibly fortunate. So are we lucky to be alive today? Maybe not everyone, maybe not everywhere. But if you had to choose any moment in human history to be born into, there is a very good chance you would choose now.